Imagine going to work every day wearing a headband made of pure gold, engraved with the words Kodesh Ladonai, holy to Adonai. Such was the honor and the burden of the high priest in the Jerusalem temple of old. Rabbi Mary Zamor writes, it is easy to assume that holy to Adonai signifies the high priest's elevated status. That's an understatement. Only the high priest bore those words on his forehead. He risked an inflated ego. Indeed, rabbis face a version of the same challenge today, even though none of us wears a gold headband proclaiming that we're holy to Adonai. Some people presume that my colleagues and I are intrinsically holy and that we are owed deference on that account. That's dangerous, as Rabbi Zamor has written elsewhere. She describes, quote, the professional or lay leader in congregation or institution who is successful in their work, yet has substantiated accusations of sexual assault, harassment, or abusive bullying behavior against them. They are trusted and beloved, generous with their time and or money. They excel in their field. And because of their success, their community will never hold them accountable for their bad behavior, even though it endangers the community's atmosphere of safety and respect, leaving a wake of damage in their path. Often working to keep that behavior and its negative impact unknown to the wider world, community leaders act as if the bad behavior were an unavoidable tax for the benefits of the community reaps from the productive predator's presence and work. To understand Rabbi Zamor's point, we need look no farther than the Catholic Church's failure to hold sexually predatory priests accountable. Those priests, holy to Adonai, like their ancient temple predecessors, were deemed too trusted and beloved, excellent in many ways, and perhaps even indispensable. Productive predators, to use Rabbi Zamor's terminology, for people to imagine that they had sinned so grievously, sullying themselves and their religious institutions as anything but holy to Adonai. Rabbi Zamor, though, insists that the high priest of old was not intrinsically holier than anyone else. Certainly, she adds, she admits the priestly class had an auspicious role in the community, with the high priest at the top of this societal and religious structure. Yet his function was to expedite holy actions, not to potentially gain from his position. Rabbi Zamor cites Rashi, who argues that wearing the headdress was essential to the priest's role of seeking forgiveness for the Israelites' sins, writing only when it was on his forehead did he atone and effect pardon. Rabbi Zamor also shares the teaching of modern commentator Aviva Zornberg, who posits that the exalted words on the headpiece are aspirational. The phrase is not a declaration that the priest is holy to Adonai, but rather that he must strive to become holy to Adonai. He's not alone. Earlier in Exodus, God tells the children of Israel, "Now then, if you will obey me faithfully and keep my covenant, you shall be to me treasured possession among all the peoples. Indeed, all the earth is mine, but you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy people." Rabbi Gunter Plaut, in his famous Torah commentary, opined that a kingdom of priests means ministering to the rest of humanity. This represented a unique idea. All the people of Israel, and not merely a select segment, would have a special religious task. If the high priest is holy to Adonai in relation to the children of Israel, Torah seems to be imparting that every member of our covenant is destined to be holy to Adonai in relating to the rest of the world. The notion that we are all all Jews are God's treasured possession is, of course, emblematic of our status as a chosen people. Having such an exalted status, being holy to God, has much to recommend it. Plaut wrote, "In times of stress, it was a source of hope and reassurance. Jewish survival might not have been possible without the conviction that Israel was indeed God's beloved, destined for high purpose and spiritual glory." However, as Plaut also notes, the notion that we are chosen has come under attack in modern times, with many arguing that in an age that decries inequality of any kind, the doctrine of special election has no further place and should be disavowed. If all Jews are, however figuratively, priests, walking around wearing a headpiece engraved with those words, Kodesh Ladonai, holy to Adonai, we are at significant risk of hubris. Rabbi Noah Satat of the Israel Religious Action Center teaches that chosenness can become Jewish supremacy, a racist perversion. She writes, even though white supremacist ideologies around the world target Jews as enemies of the superior race, an analogous ideology has existed in Israel since the 1970s. The Kahanist movement, which advocates Jewish supremacy, Rabbi Meir Kahana developed his racist theories essentially targeting Arabs both within Israel and in the occupied territories. Underlying his theories was the idea that Jews are the chosen, superior people who must therefore separate themselves from others. In Kahana's hateful words, the people of Israel were chosen since they have the souls of humans, the wonderful, special creation of the world. Gentiles, while they are physically equal to Israel, aren't human in that spiritual sense. While most of us may not know any Jews who think that other people are subhuman, we all do know Jewish people who harbor the notion that Jews are somehow superior. That, too, is Jewish supremacy, a notion that only Jews are holy to Adonai. However, if we look more closely, when the Torah tells us that we may be God's treasured people, it says that we merit that status only if we will observe the Torah and live as God commands. Just as Professor Zornberg argues that holy to Adonai is an instruction to the high priest, we too are enjoined to strive to be sacred, not to imagine that we are, by accident of birth or choice of conversion, intrinsically superior to other human beings. Being holy to Adonai is a burden. We who are members of the covenant must strive to avoid the temptation to imagine ourselves superior. Being holy to Adonai is a blessing. We who are children of Abraham and Sarah possess the gifts of Torah, a singular pathway to being God's hands here on earth. Let us always resist the temptation of superiority. Instead, in every generation, let us do the hard work to become holy to Adonai. Amen.